Welcome into another PFF grade release show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here, going over biggest storylines, unveiling the newest PFF grades, and a lot more from a hectic Week 2 of college football, to put it lightly, Dalton.
Hectic might be an understatement. Look, we had a lot of fun in Ann Arbor, but it was all day from midnight to 2 a.m. again of just absolutely bananas football, man. It was a college football Saturday for sure.
It absolutely was. So we actually late last night, we were debating what games we're going to be covering in this one, and there was just so many of them. They were like, we have to do a rapid fire segment later on in the show, but there were a few massive results that we had this past weekend. One of them, the first one that we're going to start off with, the game that we actually were in attendance for in Ann Arbor, number 3 Texas demolished number 10 Michigan 31-12 in this game. And Dalton, before we get into what we saw when we were there at that game, let's first go over the grades from the Texas against Michigan game with the top 5 highest grade players for Texas. And at number 1 is Andrew Makuba, the safety, at an 81.8. Gunnar Helm, the tight end, at an 80.2. Quinn Ewers, the quarterback, at a 79.5. Left tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. at a 79.3. And Derek Williams Jr., the other safety, at a 77.5. And then quickly we'll go over to the Michigan side of the ball with their 5 highest graded players. The quarterback Davis Warren at a 76.5 in this game. Josiah Stewart at a 75.9, the edge rusher. Rayshawn Benny, the D tackle, at a 74.4. Donovan Edwards had a 71.9 grade, the running back. And Samaj Morgan with a 68.1 grade. Dalton, for you, what was the stat from this game that really told the whole story of this game?
So I think the first thing is a lot of those grades that we just saw tell a big story, because you have, for Texas, you have Quinn Ewers up there, you have some offensive linemen up there, you have the secondary up there. It was a complete team effort in this game. I think that's the first thing that needs to be said. Their offensive line was spectacular against a really good D-line, maybe the best in the country, right? Their secondary, which was a big X factor, and I'll get into that in a minute, they played really, really well in a scenario where they should have played really, really well, with Michigan struggling in the passing game, right? And then Quinn Ewers, it has to start with Quinn Ewers, because against an elite defense in the Big House, in week two is just his favorite week of the year, isn't it? and you know, we're watching the game up in the press box, and we've always known Quinn Ewers can make the throws, right? Especially from the pocket. If he's protected enough, he can make all the big throws. He's throwing moon balls down the field. But the one thing that I noticed during the game, I said, he's moving in the pocket better than ever, better than in any game I've seen. And he's not a guy who's going to move around and run around like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. He's not going to take off running. He had a couple of good scrambles, but he's not an A-plus athlete like that, right? He's not the biggest improviser. I think that's one thing that we've always noticed in his game, is it's like there's not a whole lot of improv here. But what he can do, in the same way that a Tom Brady did for so many years, or a Joe Burrow does now, or guys like that, he can move within the pocket, okay? And I had to look at it right when we got back. I go, okay, what was his grade when he was moved off of his spot? A 90 passing grade when he was moved off his spot. I think that says everything. If he has that dimension, just the poise in the pocket and the ability to step up, and you're talking about yesterday stepping up into the teeth of the defense with Mason Graham, with Kenneth Grant, both sitting right in front of him, and making big throws or taking off scrambling or moving the chains, I think that is a dimension. It's something we used to talk about with C.J. Stroud too. Can he still produce when he's disturbed? Okay, and the handful of times that Ewers was disturbed yesterday, he produced. So I think to me, that's it. If he brings that going forward, Texas moves now into the inner circle of national title contenders.
Absolutely. And one of the touchdowns that was called back was one of his most impressive reps of the entire game. When the right tackle got a holding penalty, Ewers moved off in the pocket and found a guy in the back of the end zone. We're like, dude, that's big game Quinn right there. You know, there's a lot of games, like we always say, a lot of games against Wyoming and lesser opponents where Quinn Ewers does not really show up, but in the big ones against Alabama in both of his years there, Michigan in this game, he shows up, man, and he was outstanding against Michigan in this game. My side that tells the story is on the other side of the ball. Michigan's offense just struggled to do anything in this game. In fact, their EPA per play was a negative .276. That's actually their worst EPA per play in a game since their loss to Wisconsin 49-11 during their COVID season in 2020 when they went 2-4. So over the last 3 years, when Michigan won 3 straight Big Ten titles, went to the college football playoff as well, they never had a game that bad offensively, and like I said, back into the COVID season. So that actually, their EPA per play the week before against Fresno State would have been their third worst mark of all of last season as well. So this is 2 straight weeks where Michigan's offense has looked extremely sluggish. The receivers, I noticed, really struggled to gain separation. Davis Warren, he was the highest graded player, but in the first half at least, he was really struggling to get in the ball. The offensive line had serious issues moving people in the run game, man. I'm officially pressing the panic button on this Michigan offense right now. I think that defense is still really good, even though Quinn Ewers and that offense had a great game. I think it was more due to the fact that the Michigan defense was on the field so often because the Michigan offense just couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, and honestly, Steve Sarkisian just called a masterclass of a game, too, against a defense like that. He stayed away from Will Johnson. There was a concerted effort. Just don't throw it at Will Johnson. Okay, cool. We're going to go to the other side. The way he was mixing just run and pass and motions and controlling safeties, just doing everything you could possibly think of that an offensive play caller could do to win a ball game against a really good defense. And then I liked late in the second quarter how he went up tempo and you saw Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant really start to get gassed, right? He controlled so many elements of these games and they executed just a perfect offensive game plan. And by the time they had a lead, in the second half, they could just sit on it, right? Just don't screw this up now because we're so far ahead. And Michigan, you mentioned it, the panic button on this offense, this offense right now just looks like Colston Loveland and everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's not just the quarterback. It's not just the offensive line. It's not just the weapons. You could see hints of it even in the Fresno State game, where honestly, if they didn't have Colston Loveland, I'm not entirely sure they would have won that game.
They should have attacked the portal more, man. That was my biggest takeaway. I was like, they should have went in the portal and try to find a quarterback and find some receivers and find more O-linemen. That was my big takeaway. Their offense is going to have a lot of issues this year. I know Texas is a really good team and all that, but still, I think there's a lot of games this year where Michigan's like, okay, if they're going to look like that, can they beat USC? Can they beat Oregon? Can they beat Ohio State? I don't know. I really don't know. So we'll see, honestly. But Dalton, besides Quinn Ewers in this game, what to you is the most impressive part from that win for Texas?
I think something we talked about as the biggest weakness on this team last year was their secondary. And I know they didn't play the best passing offense at all in this game, and Michigan has a hard time throwing vertically. But you want to see a new secondary with some new pieces come in and in a huge game on the road play well. Well, you had Andrew Makuba, Jahdae Barron, Derek Williams Jr., and Malik Muhammad all have coverage grades over 70. That's going to be the X factor in all of this. Can that group play like that when they go and play Georgia, when they go and play, I don't remember if they're playing Alabama again. I'm sure Ewers hope so. But in their biggest games, can their secondary show up? And in this game, despite maybe not their toughest assignment of the year, they showed up for sure. That's the group I'm looking at that also deserves a lot of credit through, playing well even in spite of the opponent. They went out there and just shut it down as well. So their secondary deserves a lot of credit, and if Makuba and those guys can improve from what they had last year in bigger games, I mean, this was a huge game, but bigger games against bigger offenses, then you're really talking again about Texas being a more well-rounded team than they were last year.
Yeah, the secondary, that was the biggest question mark coming into the year, was the pass defense, with obviously losing Devontae Sweat and Byron Murphy as pass rushers, and then the secondary had some issues last year, and they looked really good in that game. So, yeah, credit to them. Texas O-line, I really thought this is the big matchup I was looking forward to in this game, is the Texas O-line against this Michigan D-line. You mentioned Michigan D-line might be the best in the country. Texas, though, only allowed 7 pressures on 38 pass blocking snaps, and they had a 69.7 team pass blocking grade. Now, if you hear that, you're like, oh, that's not great. That's actually the best that a team's had against Michigan since the 2022 season. So over the last 2 years, we have not seen a team pass protect as well as Texas did in this game. Calvin Banks Jr., Cameron Williams, Hayden Connor, all 3 of them only allowed 1 pressure on 38 pass blocking snaps, and their guard DJ Campbell, 0 pressures allowed on 27 pass blocking snaps as well. And again, you're talking about D-line that has Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, 2 first-round prospects on PFF's big board right now. In fact, Mason Graham is the number 1 overall freaking player on the big board right now. He had 4 pressures in this game. Kenneth Grant had 1 pressure in this game. Derek Moore had 2 pressures in this game. And Josiah Stewart had 2 pressures in this game. They gave Quinn time. And yes, when Quinn was moved off the spot, like you said, he was excellent. But they also gave him time in this game. So I was so impressed by that Texas O-line in this game. And I thought that was a big heavyweight matchup, and they absolutely won that matchup.
Yeah, no, they sure did. They dominated the trenches really on both sides of the ball. It was a masterclass from Steve Sarkisian. They dominated in the trenches. They dominated outside. They had too much speed at the end of the day, especially when Michigan got gassed. It was a dominant effort, and I think we start looking at Texas a little bit different right now.
We definitely do. They're definitely definitely a national title contender. And Dalton, one school that we thought was a national title contender after last week at least was Notre Dame. And once again, Notre Dame lost at home despite being massive favorites. It's actually the third time since 2022 that they've lost despite being 2 touchdown favorites. Second time they've lost while being at least 20-point favorites, and they were 28.5-point favorites over Northern Illinois. But the Huskies came in and had the biggest win in program history, taking down number 5 Notre Dame, 16-14 in this game. Let's look over at the highest graded players from Northern Illinois to start off in this game, and the highest grade player in this one was pretty easily Ontario Brown, their star running back, with an 85.4. Skylar Gill Howard at the D tackle at a 74.8. Amarion Knighton at a 74.3 at the corner. Ethan Hampton, the quarterback, at a 71.9, and Jason Profit at a 71.5. Deshaun Profit, 71.5. But Dalton, we got to look at the Notre Dame side of the ball. Not a lot went right from Notre Dame, especially offensively in this game. They had some defensive guys that stepped up. Xavier Watts, once again, had a nice game at a 73.9. Jeremiah Love, the running back, really the only thing going right for this Notre Dame offense right now, 71.5. Linebacker Jaden Osbury at a 71.3. Their offensive tackle Emil Wagner at a 67.6. And Jack Kaiser rounding it out at a 67.3. For you, what was the stat that told the story in this massive upset, maybe the biggest upset we're going to have all year?
I'm going to start on the defensive side because there's going to be a lot of talk about the offense, but Notre Dame is not getting to the quarterback right now. They only pressured Ethan Hampton 4 times the entire game and came up with a 63.8 pass rush grade. Last year, they were in the top 20 in pass rush grade in the country, and right now, they're just not getting to the quarterback. Howard Cross especially has 1 pressure through 2 games, a sack against Texas A&M last week. And if they're not generating, look, they need Cross and Riley Mills to be those guys in the middle, but especially Cross as a pass rusher. He was one of the best pass rushers in the country last year, and you're seeing that spread into the entire defensive line. They're just not getting to the quarterback right now. And even against a team like Northern Illinois, that's really concerning. And I know it's a low-scoring game, and their back seven's going to play well. Xavier Watts, Jack Kaiser, Ben Morrison. But they just, you have to complement it with rushing the quarterback and flustering him, because Ethan Hampton he didn't play a great game. It's against that defense, but he never looked uncomfortable. Or even in the biggest moments late in the game, Ethan Hampton was kind of in his zone, and he understood the assignment of, okay, we're in a low-scoring game, and I just have to keep moving the chains. And the defensive line never made a big play. Even in this type of game, even when I know they only gave up 16 points and it was a low-scoring game, and we're going to get into the offense, their defensive line, if Howard Cross doesn't start to turn it around here, it starts to concern me a little bit.
The craziest thing about that is that the one word I would use to describe Connor Wigman last week was uncomfortable. They made Connor Wigman extremely uncomfortable in that game.
But they had to blitz him a lot.
Yeah.
They blitzed him a lot in that game, and the front 4 didn't do as much as you might think. I liked their approach last week of blitzing him early, and then he kind of was feeling that, the old Sam Darnold seeing ghosts sort of thing.
Yeah.
You saw that from Wigman. I'd have to check the numbers, but I didn't see them blitz as much in this game, and their defensive line is not getting home right now.
But just the fact that Ethan Hampton, like I said, looks so comfortable, but then Connor Wigman, who's QB1 in the draft, and Texas A&M obviously has a lot more talent in Northern Illinois, he looked uncomfortable. It was just like the weird dichotomy of having the two of them right next to each other back-to-back weeks. It's just so weird. My side that tells the story, Dawn, this Notre Dame passing offense, woof. 4.9 yards per attempt in this game. That is tied for the lowest they've had in a game since the 2019 season, when Michigan held them to 4.6 yards per attempt. Riley Leonard had a 53.4 passing grade in this game. His accuracy all over the place. Missed wide open receivers. He didn't see defenders at times as well. He was so uncomfortable under pressure. At a 28 passing grade under pressure in this game. One of his big time throws, I will say he had 2 big time throws in this game. One of them, though, was dropped by his receiver, Jaden Greathouse. So even when he was putting the ball on target, his receivers were dropping them sometimes as well. And the leading receiver in this game, Bo Collins, had 45 yards receiving in this game. This Notre Dame passing attack, this is the worst we've seen by their passing attack in half a decade in a game. And it came against Northern Illinois. Illinois. I'm again, like the Michigan offense, it's a little bit of panic now about, okay, how bad is this passing game going to be for Notre Dame this year?
Yeah, and look, my most impressive part, I think it's not just self-inflicted wounds. Northern Illinois secondary played really, really well. They picked off Leonard twice. They had a 76.6 team coverage grade. That's a really good mark, especially when you're stepping up in competition. You got Riley Leonard. You got all these transfer weapons coming in. So their secondary was fantastic too, and there were times where they were just covering it really, really well. But I think the other thing that I found odd, especially with Notre Dame as a team who obviously they're based in the run, right? Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard, we're trying to run the ball. They only ran one play action pass the entire game. I just don't, and I know Mike Denbrock is spread it out and quick game and 3-step drop and throw it down the sidelines, but
that's crazy.
And at LSU, they were a very light play-action team, too, with Jaden Daniels. But understandably, that wasn't a running team. I would drop back and throw it with Jaden Daniels and Neighbors and all those guys if I had them, too. But Notre Dame is not the team that can only get through a game running one play-action pass. They have to find something. And you would think, especially on the move, they could find something for Riley Leonard to run out on the edge if there's bootlegs. I know they don't get under center much with Denbrock, but there has to be something in there where you can just make it a little bit easier, open the windows a little bit more, because if you're always facing just standard send 4, drop 7, we've talked about the goal. You don't really want to blitz Riley Leonard. You don't want him taking off running on you. So you're going to see a lot of conventional coverages, and teams are going to hit their landmarks, and there's going to be tight windows like there were in this game. Like a team like Northern Illinois, who obviously more than talent is just really fundamentally sound. They always are. Those are the teams that can beat you if you drop back and you're predictable all the time and you're always just 3-step, quick game, no deception. If there's no deception in your offense, you don't get people moving, and you really need people moving to make your quarterback's life easier. So that was an odd part to me, that only one play action pass. I didn't see how many they had last week against A&M, but only one play action pass in the entire game when you're a team that really should be built on running the ball and play action.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with Jeremiah Love is by far your best offensive player through 2 weeks right now, and you're not running play action when the defense, the thing they're most scared of right now is Jeremiah Love.
They will move up. Like, there are shots that can be created if you run action off of Love. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what they're most scared of right now. And speaking of running backs that scare defenses, that's my most impressive part of this game. Ontario Brown, listen, it was an ugly, ugly offensive game. Obviously, only 30 points total scored in this game. But Ontario Brown was Northern Illinois' entire offense in this game. You saw it already. He's the highest graded player from this game. He had 99 rushing yards and 102 rushing yards after contact. He actually had more yards after contact than he did rushing yards, which just speaks to how good he was at breaking tackles. But not even that, Dalton. That's a good day on the ground. He had 2 catches on 2 targets for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was outstanding as a receiver in this game. He actually accounted for 75% of Northern Illinois' points and 61% of their total yards in this game. So Ontario Brown was by far the best player on the field in this game, and really it's the reason why Northern Illinois was able to pull off this upset.
Absolutely, and I think the touchdown early was the big one when you talk about going up 7-0 on a slow-paced Notre Dame offense early. So big for Northern Illinois to get out ahead, and I think that's how you're going to beat Notre Dame, is getting out ahead of them and then just kind of playing. You're gonna get in those grinder games, right? It's going to be Notre Dame's defense, and it's going to be low scoring, and every game's going to look like this, right? I don't know that Notre Dame is capable of winning a high scoring game if a game got somewhere into the 30s, right? So those are the games, and this is the only thing about, for Notre Dame's sake, you were hoping to see that their offense, it was going to take time to gel. A whole new offensive line that I think was 6 career starts coming into the year. Riley Leonard, all the new weapons, young running backs. They needed this time to get through this and play these defensive games. The problem is when you play these close to the vest games, teams like Northern Illinois are perfectly willing to stay in it. They don't want to get in those – underdogs don't want to get in those high-flying shootouts most of the time. They want to be in one-score games and just see where it goes, and that's exactly what happened. And, I don't know about you, but I think Notre Dame's in a spot now with this loss, because Northern Illinois was not one of the group of 5 teams
to watch out for.
For as playoff contention. First of all, now – all of a sudden, if they win the MAC and maybe they finish the year with only 1 loss, now they're in that group.
Oh, absolutely.
But preseason, we didn't think they were in that group. I don't know about you. I think Notre Dame might have to win out just to get. If they have another loss, especially with kind of a light schedule outside of the USC game, And that game at the end of the year might be everything. They can't lose another game, I don't think, with this loss in
I agree with you. It's too easy. It's too easy of a schedule, and the fact that they don't play a conference title game either, like that's another thing against them. So
and a Florida State game that isn't nearly as meaniful as it was in the preseason when they were number 10.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think they have to. I also think they have to win out now. And so real quick, Dawn, is this a fluke, or do we think this is something to be a little worried about Notre Dame going forward?
I'm a little worried. I don't think I'm as worried about the Notre Dame offense as the Michigan offense, but I don't know that it's that far away from it. They need everything to just sync together, right? And I think the offensive line has played reasonably well the first two games considering how young they are. But again, they have to find answers to create explosive plays in the pass game, whether it's play action, whether it's finding someone who can get deep. Mike Denbrock doesn't have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas this time. It's not that easy, and he doesn't have Jaden Daniels. So they have to find a way to create explosive passing plays to make people feel like, okay, they're a threat vertically. Then you soften them up. It's everything we saw from Texas against Michigan. Okay, they're a threat downfield. Then the run game opens, and it all sets each other up. Right now, it's not. It's disjointed because they don't have any threat of a vertical passing game.
I mean, this is, again, third time in 3 years Marcus Freeman's had a massive home upset happen to him. I mean, Stanford happened a couple years ago. Marshall happened a couple years ago. And now Northern Illinois this year. It's rough. It really is rough. And I'm with you. I think Notre Dame almost has to win out now. It's a tough sledding for the Fighting Irish right now. Not tough sledding, though, for Nebraska in this game, Dawn. Wow, what a beatdown by Nebraska. 28-10, the final score of that game in Lincoln. Let's go over the 5 highest graded players quickly for Nebraska in this game. Highest graded player was Tommy Hill, the corner, who had a pick 6 in this game at an 83.4 grade overall. Ramir Johnson, the running back, with a 78.2. Ty Robinson, the D tackle, at a 72.4. Nate Borkircher, the tight end, at a 70.1. And Dante Dowdo at a 69.6. So 2 running backs really playing well for Nebraska in this game. Let's go over to Colorado, Dawn. 2 highest grade players, Travis Hunter at corner, 81.3, and Travis Hunter at a receiver, 73.4. Linebacker Nakai Green-Hill at a 72.7. Dallin Hayden, the running back, at a 71.6. And Shedeur Sanders rounding it out at a 69.3. For you, Dawn, in this game, what went wrong for Colorado, really? What was the stat that tells the story here?
It was everything in the trenches, right? And we're each going to get to a side of it here. I'll go with the defensive line, and it was something that concerned me last week against North Dakota State. They stopped the run well, but they didn't get a whole lot of pass rush on Cam Miller last week, and they got not a whole lot this week on Dylan Raiola either. They got 11 pressures, but just a 58.1 pass rush grade, no sacks, and through 2 weeks, they're 98th in the country in pass rush grade and only have 1 sack from their defensive line. I think yesterday BJ Green was the only player on their team with a pass rush grade of at least 70. They're not getting to the quarterback, and obviously they're struggling in the trenches on both sides. And eventually the run game, you saw the run game for Nebraska starting to work, and they were getting some fun stuff going too, like jet sweeps and things like that. But BJ Green, Deion Hayes, those 2 guys especially, they were brought in as the pass rushers. They brought in a bunch of run stoppers. I do think that's gotten better. And yesterday they just gassed out because the offense in the first half just couldn't find anything. But they're going to need more pass rush when you talk about they have to face Arizona and they have to face some of these other really good offenses in the Big 12. It's going to be a problem if they just can't rush the passer, especially without blitzing. And then we talk about if they have to blitz a lot, then they get back into the man-to-man stuff, and then they have other issues. And there is so much in this game on both sides that in the trenches they just got dominated. And I think it's a problem because they have so much talent. I've told you before, and I will stand by it, and it's only 1 loss. And look, there's time to come back, and we say this with all the teams. They have the talent to win like 9 games. They do. They have the athletic talent, the quarterback, a lot of others. But if they walk in and it feels like the same thing every week, doesn't it? Where we just go, they weren't good enough in the trenches again. And maybe, I don't know, maybe another game or 2 of this, we may just have to accept that they're just not going to be good in the trenches. Yeah. I don't know what other way to put it, and is just on both sides, and you're getting into the other side now, they can't overcome, even with all of the weapons they have and a good secondary that they have. They just can't overcome getting nothing from their pass rush, and then the next part that you're getting into right now.
Yeah, the pass protection also. I mean, and this game was rough. And I know you mentioned last week how Nebraska had to get after Shedeur Sanders. Well, they did that in this game. They had a 48% pressure rate allowed, Colorado did, in this game. Off the edge, especially, what was a really big issue. Tyler Brown, the right tackle, allowed 9 pressures in this game. Jordan Seaton, the true freshman left tackle, allowed 7 pressures in this game. As a team, they had 6 sacks allowed as well. And last week, Shedeur Sanders was outstanding under pressure against North Dakota State. Had like a 90 passing grade under pressure, was elite. This week wasn't the case. He was 3 for 9 for 25 yards under pressure. Obviously, 6 sacks taken as well. He was taking hits all night from Nebraska, and we knew this could be an issue with the Colorado offensive line. It's like, yeah, they brought in a brand new offensive line than last year, but does that mean it'll be better? We don't know. We got to see. And in this game, it certainly was not. They really had a lot of issues blocking, especially off the edge from Nebraska all night, and that really just stalled their offense, honestly, because they have talent. Like I said, talent on the perimeter. They have great quarterback, really good receivers, but if you don't have protection for your quarterback, you're not going to be able to do anything. And that's why Colorado only put up 10 points in this game.
Absolutely. And I'm really, really impressed, too. Ty Robinson on the big monster, Ty Robinson monster. On the inside, number 9. That's an NFL player.
He made some money. That
is an NFL player. I love watching him. He is just a big monster on the inside there for Nebraska. But no, you're absolutely right. You can't. We've seen it in the NFL. We see it in college. You see it everywhere. You can't function if your offensive line plays like that. In the run game, too. I mean, their running game is just non-existent. Right, yeah. And for as much as I hated the stat they kept getting thrown out there last night about they have negative 27 rushing yards. Well, okay, he's up now because the sacks, the whole NCAA sack rushing yards thing still kills me. But it's still true that their running game's non-existent too. And their running backs through 2 weeks, Max, have 25 carries for 81 yards.
Oh.
It's just not, you can't.
It's like 3 yards a pop.
I understand teams that go, okay, the screen game and the quick passing game is an extension of our running game. But in this offense, it's not an extension of anything. There's nothing to extend from. They don't even have a running game. So they're either going to find it, and there's a boatload of teams in the Big 12 that can run the ball. Yep. Almost, I think all of them. Is there a team in the Big 12 other than Colorado?
I don't think there is.
I think they're the only team.
It's a prerequisite to join the conference.
I think it was. I think it was, and they might have missed the boat. I mean, they're the only team in the Big 12, I think, that can't run the ball at all.
Yeah.
And they were dead last in the country in rushing last year. It's a problem. If they don't put this together in the trenches, they're going to have a season similar to last year. They are I think they're one of the widest variance teams in the country. They have the athletic talent to win 9, 10. And they have
the trenches, man.
And the trenches, you get games like this where they give you no shot at all.
Yeah. So, Dalton, he wasn't one of the 5 highest graded Nebraska players in this game, but you were still really impressed by the true freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola. Tell me why.
I think I was more impressed with him in this effort than I would have been if he threw for 350. Dylan Raiola understood the assignment. Okay, let's look at his line real quick. Okay, 23 for 30. 185 yards, 1 touchdown. That was actually his worst throw of the night. That should have been picked off. That one touchdown
turnover-worthy play.
That one touchdown was also his one turnover-worthy play. It was actually his worst throw of the night.
The rare one.
And through 2 games, an 82.7 adjusted completion percentage. Okay, and Raiola, look, even Patrick Mahomes had to learn, right, when Tyreek Hill left. I know I'm going there. I'm going with the other twin. Even when Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill, took him a few weeks, and then as the season went on in 2022 and then into 23 and even now, he understands the assignment. This game for Nebraska was not going to be won if it was Shedeur Sanders versus Dylan Raiola. That's the scenario where Colorado would have won the game. It became Nebraska versus Colorado all the way around, all 22 guys, more than that, and special teams, everything, right? It became team versus team, and Raiola understood his place in that. Run the offense, throw accurate passes, make a couple big plays, the big crossbody throw late in the second quarter. There are going to be times, there's going to come moments probably this year where, okay, Raiola has to be that guy. This was not the game. And the fact that he understood that and played so efficiently and made the right decisions, and even times when, okay, take a sack, throw the ball away. Remember, we keep talking about the poise, right, with Raiola and just how he looks like a veteran despite being a true freshman. It showed it. And I don't think it gets said enough that quarterbacks deserve credit in games. Even though he graded like around a 68, that's all they needed from him. Mm-hmm. Do what is needed. And I knew it. I was like, I think Nebraska could win this game if they play like they did against UTEP last week. There was balance, and it was a team effort. And it wasn't Raiola. He didn't have to go out there against UTEP and throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. He didn't have to do that in this game. There will come a time. There will come a time where he looks like a Heisman candidate, and he's doing that because he's the best player on the field. They don't need him to be that in this game. They may not need him to be that for a few weeks because they may walk into Ohio State now, October 26th, after this effort and their schedule coming. They may walk into Ohio State undefeated.
Yeah.
And what a burner of a game that is going to be if they're both undefeated. If Ohio State can beat Oregon and all of that, that's going to be the biggest Nebraska game in a long time. And then you will see if they can manage it like this or if Raiola has to be the superstar. But the fact that they didn't force him to be the superstar in a high-profile game last night, that's everything to me. I think his poise and his presence back there is a huge asset to this team.
Yeah, true freshman Dylan Raiola just did not lose the game for them. That was huge. And like you said, like if they get into a game where it's you got to go throw for throw, Shedeur Sanders, even though Raiola's got amazing potential, Shedeur Sanders still beats him out, I think, right now. So that would have been a game they lost, but you're right. Like that, they didn't force him to make it that kind of game in this one. So that was impressive. You mentioned the Nebraska front seven already, how impressive they were already. But the Nebraska coverage unit, I also want to highlight here. They were really, really good in this game. Tommy Hill, especially the corner, who is, I think, one of the most underrated corners in the country. He had that back-breaking pick six for Colorado, where it was a 7-0 game. Colorado's deep in their own territory. We're like, okay, Shedeur Sanders has always been known for making these long 90-plus yard drives to score touchdowns. They tied up here. We got a ball game. Boom, pick six. And it was like, now we're in trouble.
The morale, even more than 14-0 late in the first quarter. That was like emotionally backbreaking.
Exactly,
because now even if Colorado wanted to run the ball, they're not going to do it. And Nebraska's just proven, we can make a play now. Last year they didn't make any plays in the secondary like that, and to make a play like that early, that's emotionally backbreaking for Colorado.
Yeah, 76.4 team coverage grade. Tommy Hill 83.7. Tommy Hill also had 4 coverage stops in this game as well, so he was maybe the best player in the entire field for Nebraska in this game, and he actually was the highest graded player overall in this game as well. So that kind of tells a story with him. So yeah, Nebraska's coverage unit, I really want to highlight too. They really did a great job. The pass rush did a great job, and the coverage unit, it really was all around defensive effort to completely shut down Shedeur Sanders and Colorado. Last game that we're fully going over, Dalton, before we do a rapid fire segment, is Boise State hanging around with number 7 Oregon in this game, 37-34, the final score. Oregon needed a last-second field goal to win this game. Let's go over the highest-graded players on both sides in this game, starting off with Oregon. Actually, Dawn, their highest-graded player, Bryce Botcher right there, he's actually a baseball player, outfielder for the Oregon baseball team as well at 82.4. Johnny Cornelius at a 79.6, Derek Harmon at a 78.7, Devin Jackson at 78.7 as well, and Jamari Caldwell at a 75.3. And then we'll also go over to the Boise State Broncos in this one. Omarion McCoy, the corner, at a 79.4. Ashton Jeanty, who has been outstanding through 2 weeks, 79.2. Sheldon Newton at a 73.4, the D tackle. Marco Notarini, the linebacker, at a 73.1. And Rodney Robinson rounding it out at a 71.5. Dawn, for you, what was the stat that really told the story and why Boise State was able to hang around in this game?
There is going to continue to be a lot of talk about this Oregon offense and where it's at right now. And I find it interesting that 4 of their 5 best players in this game were defensive players. But I mentioned last week that I was a little worried about how Oregon can get vertical, okay? And they had a couple completions to Evan Stewart early, right? One bomb down the left sideline and then a 34-yard touchdown. Those were the only 2 completions, though, the entire game. They had over 10 air yards. And Gabriel just 2 for 5 on throws over 10 yards. And after that Stewart touchdown, that Evan Stewart touchdown happened at roughly 9:30 in the second quarter. Their offense only scored 9 points from that point forward. They had the 2 special teams touchdowns, the kick return, the punt return. They only scored 9 points from that moment forward, and they did not complete another pass of at least 10 air yards. Evan Stewart, those 2 big plays were huge for him because maybe he has to be that guy that gets vertical for them and can win downfield as opposed to everything being after the catch with guys like Tej Johnson and Trayshawn Holden, right? Which, look, Trayshawn Holden with the long touchdown, too, took house to slant for a 60-something yard touchdown. That's big. But you can't always do that, right? This is Boise State, and their secondary is not great, and you can get yards after the catch on them. Eventually, this just does not look as consistently explosive as it did last year with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. And I think when you're talking about a team, even with Dillon Gabriel and all these talented guys, if you're only throwing the ball 6 yards on every single play, you have to be able to threaten it. You have to be able to threaten explosive plays through the air. And I think to come out of this game with only 2 completions over 10 yards in the air and 9 points in the last 39 minutes against a Boise State defense that clearly gives up a lot of points, right? They gave up 45 points to Georgia. So actually, I shouldn't even say that. They gave up – Boise State went in there on defense, and they gave up 23 points to Oregon in Autzen Stadium.
I was just going to say
actually, that's – now that I say it out loud, that's a good effort. Those 2 special teams touchdowns really bailed out Oregon's offense because they have not looked great. They scored 24 on Idaho last week, and they scored 23 on Boise this week. There's a lot to figure out with this with this Oregon offense. And the first thing to me is it starts with we need ways to create explosive plays down the field. We need a guy who can be that Troy Franklin type of guy that hit home runs for us. Evan Stewart did it twice in this game and then went silent. We need it more consistently. We need a more consistent threat downfield.
Yeah. I was just going to say the fact that 2 of their touchdowns in this game came out of Tez Johnson, 85-yard punt return, and then Jaden Lamar kickoff return touchdown as well. So 23 points Oregon's offense scored in this game. And Dalton, you mentioned how they weren't able to get the ball going downfield. I think a big reason for that, this O-line is worrisome. We thought this O-line, hand up, I thought this O-line was a top 5 O-line in the country entering the year. I thought Oregon had the best offense in the country entering the year. I might be completely wrong about that right now. Oregon in this game had a 64.4 pass blocking grade. This is the 2nd straight week that Oregon's been below a 65 in a pass blocking grade, and it came against Idaho and Boise State. Last year, they only had 1 game all season where they were below a 65 pass blocking grade. They came against Washington with their really good D-line led by Braylon Trice. Josh Connerly Jr., who we like a lot, their left tackle, he allowed 2 sacks in this game. I think actually the offense looks fine. I think the receiving core is fine. Dillon Gabriel's fine. The running game looks fine. This O-line, though, I am really, really worried about right now. And this is 2 straight weeks against an FCS opponent and a Group of 5 opponent. And yes, Boise State is one of the best Group of 5 teams. I understand that. But 2 straight weeks now, when you get into Big Ten play with more physical teams, I'm worried about this O-line now. So that's my stat that tells the story. I think this Oregon O-line is kind of killing this offense right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's a combination of all of it. And it could be in part why they can't make those explosive plays. Maybe Dillon Gabriel just doesn't have enough time because we've seen him throw the ball plenty downfield at Oklahoma, at UCF, anywhere he's been able to throw the ball down the field. But this is the combination of those 2 things is a problem because you can't just be A, not physical enough on the offensive line in the Big Ten, and B, you can't just check down and throw 60. You're not going to be able against the Michigans and the Ohio States of the world and the Penn State. I don't think they play. Penn State doesn't play Oregon, but against those types of teams, you're not going to house 60-yard touchdowns after the catch.
No.
These teams can cover. These teams can tackle. And even yesterday, say in the Texas-Michigan game, they had to set up those things. They didn't just walk out there and run a 6-yard curl and run around them and go. Like you have to set these things up. And if your offensive line doesn't allow you to do that, and if your receivers aren't explosive enough to do that, you're going to look kind of plodding on offense.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, for you, what was the most impressive part and why Oregon was ultimately able to escape with a victory in this game?
They were able to escape because they were better on special teams.
Yep.
The third phase. And you mentioned the Jaden Lamar kick return. It was actually Noah Whittington did 99.9% of the work.
Right, yes.
And eventually he dropped the ball a foot from the goal line, and Lamar got credit for the touchdown.
Call. I was looking at the box score real quick.
Yeah, in the box score, it's Lamar's touchdown, but he gets about a foot on it. It's a 1-foot kick return yards.
Finish the play. Finish the play. Exactly. And actually, when they reviewed it, they said the only reason it stood is because Lamar covered it. Yeah.
Could you imagine if that ball would have rolled out the end zone? I mean, we've seen it so many times.
They would have lost the game.
So but return to kick for a touchdown. Return to punt for a touchdown. Tez Johnson had a big punt return in the first quarter that set up the Evan Stewart touchdown. They were just better than Boise on special teams. Boise missed a long field goal late, but they have a big time kicker who probably hopes he can hit a 53, 54 yard. It seems like we're seeing that in college more than ever. I mean, you see these guys trying 54-yarders, 59-yarders.
62-yarder in the Notre Dame game at the end of that game.
Yeah, they took a shot at that. How about the kick from Iowa State?
Yes.
54 yards, in Iowa in the clutch. It feels like we're seeing more great kickers than ever, but Oregon was better than Boise State in the third phase in this game, not necessarily on offense and defense. So, look, sometimes you escape games like that, and they have a lot to work on, but it's good to have a really good special teams unit, especially Tej Johnson as a punt return. That feels like it's not even fair sometimes when he's back there. That was the reason they won this game, was their special teams. They have to get a lot of credit.
It's sad that college kickers are getting better, because that was the thing that I loved about college football, was how unreliable college kickers were. It made games so hilarious. Just like a 25-yard chip shot to win. Nope, we're going to overtime.
We saw it in the Arkansas game, didn't we?
We'll get into that, and how I'm a little still ticked off about that game. But Dalton, my most impressive part of this game was easily Ashton Jeanty. This guy's the Heisman right
It's
now.
a good pick.
Is he the Heisman trophy? Like, you got to. I understand we're months away. If you have to give out the Heisman trophy right now, he's going to Ashton Jeanty, I think, right?
It's either him or Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers, Cam Ward probably up there.
I know Jackson Dart's got
Miller Moss.
Miller Moss is a good one.
Dave Safaro, shout out to him for this stat. Jackson Dart has 8 total touchdowns and 7 total incompletions.
I can't give it a Dart because he hasn't really played.
No, he hasn't played anymore,
Middle Tennessee was a step up from last week, but not too far. No, I mean, yeah, you look at Quinn Ewers, you look at Ashton Jeanty, and Miller Moss is a good one too.
Yeah.
What he did against LSU and then tearing it up against Utah State last night, that might be your top 3 right there. But Jeanty's incredible.
Potential Miller Moss interview coming soon. Potential. Well, we'll see. We can set it up, but potential.
It's in the works. We'll see.
We're in the works. But Ashton Jeanty, outstanding in this game. Interview, if you want to watch Ashton Jeanty.
We did have an interview.
We interviewed him. He was, again, awesome last week against Georgia Southern. 25 carries for $192 and 3 touchdowns in this game against Oregon with 9 forced missed tackles. The thing about Ashton Jeanty that so many people who don't watch him always go to is like, okay, Boise State running back, he's killing Group of 5 competition. No, last year against UCLA, last year against Washington, he did really well. This game against Oregon, he did really well. This guy's the best running back in America. He is.
Right now he is, yeah.
He's the best running back in America.
Yeah.
And we had so many great guys coming back this year with Ollie Gordon and Quinshon Judkins. No, but Ashton Jeanty right now. He has 459 rushing yards, 86 more than anyone else in the country this season. 9 rushing touchdowns, 3 more than any other running back in the country this year. 92.1 rushing grade, leads the country as well. And Dawn, the scariest part about this for Ashton Jeanty, they haven't even used him as a receiver yet, which is his best attribute. He has 5 catches for 12 yards this entire season. He's the best receiving back in the country. So all of a sudden you're talking about, okay, he's the best pure rusher in America, and you haven't even tapped into his best attribute, which is his receiving ability. This guy is a bona fide superstar, and I might get fired for saying this on the PFF airwaves. He's probably going to be a first-round running back in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I agree. There was one deep ball where they tried him on a go route last night that he made a terrific catch on, but he ended up out of bounds. Yep. These are the types of plays he can make. We know what he can do in the receiving game, and the more they add that into their offense to create easier throws, the better they're going to be. Jeanty, you could cut those numbers in half, and you'd be like, wow, he's having a great first 2 weeks. And the fact that they're that – no, I mean – what did he say? 2,500 total and 20 touchdowns?
And we scoffed at him. We're like, oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, good luck, man.
He's halfway to the 20 touchdowns already.
Yep. He's already halfway.
It's just silly what he's doing. And now he's going to get into Mountain West competition.
Yeah.
We already know. We know what he's going to do against the Mountain West. I mean, he really could put up those types of numbers this year.
Shout out Trevor Sekmo. He had him as RB1 entering the year, and I was like, Ollie Gordon's really special. Quinshon Judkins, they are very special. But, Trevor might be on about that.
He's
next to Alvin Kamara, man. I see a lot of Kamara.
I'm with you. There's actually no logical answer to stopping him. You just kind of hope.
There's Oregon just bouncing off him. It was like, oh gosh, yeah. So he was outstanding. Okay, Dalton, we got to go to our rapid fire now because again, this is a thing we're doing. We're like, okay, we'll break down 5 games. And then there were like 15 games. We're like, we got to talk about it. So we're going to do rapid fire, just quick hits, like 1 or 2 minutes in each game. Starting off with the Alabama game in this one. Alabama struggling with USF. Yes, 42-16 victory. Yes. It was a 5-point game with 6 minutes left, and then Alabama just poured it on in the final 6 minutes to almost cover the spread, ironically, in this game. But are you worried about the Alabama a little bit right now?
A little. They need Caden Proctor healthy.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just say this. They are never going to play the South Florida Bulls again. This is 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row where they've played USF, which for Alabama is a foreign. I like USF. I like Byron Brown, everything they have going on in the American. They're a serious American contender. 2 years in a row they've played USF, and they were out-physicaled in both games. USF's defensive line outplayed them in both of these games. And Bama's, look, first of all, Alabama's offensive line, 53.1 overall grade against USF, okay? And they need Caden Proctor back because last night Tyler Booker played left tackle, and then they had a backup left guard in there, and the right tackle was struggling. They need Proctor back. They need to get set. They need this interior set. They need Caden Proctor in there. They need to get their front five going because their offensive line playing like it did last night is a concern. The other one is Jalen Milroe. 52.2 overall grade last night. And the thing that would concern me, you remember in the playoff game against Michigan, Michigan's answer for Milroe was blitz him every single play. Just blitz him. Keep blitzing him because he takes too long to make his decisions. Okay. Last night, USF blitzed him on 40% of their pass plays. He had a 41 grade against the blitz.
Yep.
USF watched the Michigan tape, and they knew speed him up because he just doesn't. He's not the quick decision maker, right? He throws it deep or he runs around. If you speed his process up, and I think other teams are going to start doing this in SEC play, especially when they play Georgia. I think one thing Kirby Smart regrets from the Georgia game last year was sitting back and sending three-man rushes and using double spies and waiting for Milroe. Don't wait for him. If you go get him, there's a problem here. I think it's a problem consistent with what we saw last year, even before Kalen DeBoer got there. They're going to have to find an answer in something a little bit quicker in the passing game to hold off these blitzes.
Yeah, Alabama was sloppy yesterday. 3 turnovers, Byron Brown, 126 rushing yards, and USF had 0 passing game whatsoever. Negative .637 EPA per pass, but Alabama knew it was coming in the run game. They still couldn't stop it. And yeah, Jalen Milroe with a 49.5 passing grade. They've really struggled yesterday. Dawn, my Nittany Lions also struggled against Bowling Green. They won by 7 despite being 35.5-point favorites. Is this something that you're a fluky game, or do you think my Nittany Lions are in trouble here?
I'm gonna call this one fluky. I think it was a bad first half. I love where Andy Kotelnicki's already taken their running game. 261 rushing yards, excluding if you take out sacks, because yeah. So for us, 261 rushing yards. Katron Allen looked really good. Nick Singleton looked really good. Drew Aller, another good week in the passing game, even though it was kind of low volume. I think he had 19 passing attempts again this week, somewhere around there. He's allowing Aller to just play within the system, and Aller's doing well. You can see Drew Aller getting more comfortable in this system. And I'm going to tell you something, Max. The throws up the seam are going to become a signature. These balls up that he's throwing up the seam, his accuracy still has to get more consistent. That's why his grade last week was lower than people think, because he had a lot of misses. All of his incompletions last week were actually on him. Kind of a similar case, but he got better this week. There's a few more big throws this week. And I think the thing that happened to Penn State in this game, and there's a reason on both sides that I'm going to get into, but their first half coverage grade, 53.7, their second half coverage grade, 83.7. So just a bad half in the secondary, and I thought when they went in the second half and they started using more too high coverages, another case I've been talking about with several teams where too much man coverage, just too much. Just lay off it, sit back, sit and wait. And when they started playing 2 safeties back instead of just cover 1 and Winston back there by himself, they just shut down Bowling Green. So I think Tom Allen made the adjustments. I'm not as worried about this game, and I still love the way their offense looks all the way around.
Yeah, like you said, the coverage was really what I was worried about in the first half. And Harold Fannin had 7 catches for 110 yards in the first half. And then second half only had 4 catches for 27 yards. So they figured it out that, hey, Harold Fannin is literally their entire offense. Let's shut this guy down and we could escape with the victory. And yeah, that was a dangerous game for Penn State for sure. I agree with you. I think it was a little fluky. What might not be fluky though, Dawn, Eli's Volunteers demolishing NC State, 51-10 final score in this game. Before we get to our reactions, Eli, you have a quick reaction? I don't know if you have the mic right now, but your Volunteers look awesome right now, Eli.
Looking really good, even in a game where Nico didn't have his best stuff. Defense played a real good ball. At the beginning, they started off kind of slow, but liked how they bounced back, and the run game really picked it up in the second half for Tennessee.
Dude, Tennessee, 252 rushing yards in this game. NC State had 52 rushing yards in this game. NC State, negative .973 EPA per rush. That was their worst since the 2021 season. So it really was. It wasn't even about Nico against Grayson McCall. It was about Tennessee's ground game dominating and just absolutely shutting down NC State's ground game.
Yeah, it was. That's the exact thing I was going to go to, is the rushing disparity. And you talk about now if Tennessee is going to be balanced and allow Nico to just not have to carry them. Okay, same thing as Dylan Raiola, right? Nico made one start last year. Don't expect him to carry you. There will be times he's a superstar, but it's the same thing, right? And he had a couple of interceptions. He didn't play his best game, and they won 51-10 anyway. And the guys I actually want to point out a couple of things. They held Jordan Waters, who's a really good back for NC State, to 7 carries for -4 yards. That's incredible, because we had questions coming into the year more so about Tennessee's defense, and James Pierce Jr. was very quiet. He didn't have a pressure in this game. One of the big questions we had was other guys on Tennessee's defensive line stepping up. And I'll tell you right now, Dominic Bailey stepping up. His pass rush grade just missed a 90 last night. Amari Thomas stepping up. Tyree West stepping up. They have guys right now. Think about this. Nico Iamaleava was quiet last night. Relatively had a decent game. He wasn't great. James Pierce was basically silent. And they won the game 51-10.
Yep.
If the rest of their D-line now is going to step up when Pierce isn't at his best, or now get in tandem with Pierce when he is at his best, Tennessee may have just proved. I mean, they have 3 big games on their schedule. This one, which they dominated, and then the Alabama and the Georgia games. And if they play like this in the trenches, in the run game, and the depth guys on their defensive line, now you have a real playoff contender. Absolutely.
Tennessee's 2 best players almost did nothing in this game, and they won by 41 points against a top 25 team. That is scary.
That's exactly the type of stuff that Josh Heupel wants to see.
Yep.
Is a more well-rounded team that isn't just throwing bombs and hoping James Pierce can take it over. This is the type of effort he wanted to see, more so than just his 2 or 3 best players dominating.
Dalton, one SEC team that's starting a 5-star sophomore quarterback did not look as good as Tennessee did, and that is Oklahoma. Number 15 Oklahoma had a scare against Houston, who got dominated by UNLV last week. Oklahoma won by 4 in this game, despite being 27.5-point favorites. That Oklahoma offense looked pretty bad in that game against Houston.
It's all the way around. This is a project right now. You have a redshirt freshman quarterback. You have a new offensive coordinator. You have a new offensive line.
Yep.
You have a pretty new receiving core, especially your number 1 guy, Deion Burks, coming as a transfer. There's some issues, because you remember Houston last week got dominated by UNLV at home. They went down there and beat them 27-7, and Oklahoma barely escaped this game with a win. I'm a little worried about just a lot of the stuff around Jackson Arnold. And first for Arnold, if they keep him clean, he's been really good. An 84.5 grade in a clean pocket through 2 weeks. I think in this game it was 84.5. Arnold pressured was a 39.7. So you're getting a guy that you need to keep clean with a brand new offensive line. And I'm actually more worried about this receiving core. I know they tore up Temple last week, but Temple's Temple, and they had 4 first-half turnovers. Oklahoma through 2 weeks has the 9th worst receiving grade in the country. And I need somebody other than Deion Burks to become a weapon here, right? They just need, I don't know if Jaleel Farouk or the tight ends or whoever else, they need somebody to step up, because right now they're not making a ton of explosive plays in the passing game either. And we're so used to it constantly with Oklahoma. For forever and ever we've watched Oklahoma, and they make big passing plays down the field. It's not happening right now, and they're playing. The 9th worst receiving grade in the country is not going to get it done, especially in the SEC. When you start playing SEC secondaries, that's not going to get it done. They need Deion Burks. They need a lot of these receivers outside of him too to just step up, because their passing game is a little disjointed right now. I'd be worried.
They averaged 3.7 yards per play. And Dalton, this Houston defense last year was one of the 10 worst in the country in EPA per play, and they allowed 27 points to UNLV. And their 4 highest graded defenders from last year's team left. So we're talking about Houston defense that, by all accounts, should be pretty bad this year, and Oklahoma could not do anything offensively in this game. Arnold was okay. I had no issues with him. I thought he was fine in this game. The skill position players had a 62.4 receiving grade, 59.5 rushing grade. The O-line had a 51.2 run blocking grade as well. they couldn't do anything. They pass protected pretty well in this game. We'll give them that. It's 78.7 pass blocking grade. Other than that, though, they struggled to do anything.
This is a really young unit that's a project right now.
It
with
is.
a new offensive coordinator. I don't know that got talked about, just how young Oklahoma's offense is. Against a team like Houston, again, the week before, we saw them just get dominated by UNLV. I would be a little worried about this Oklahoma offense right now.
So the other Oklahoma State, Dawn, number 16 Oklahoma State, going to double overtime with Arkansas before winning this game 39-31. First of all, this is my upset call of the week. I said Arkansas was going to win. I think they're plus 230. The way Arkansas blew this game, I demand to get at least half points in this one.
Well, we're not doing that.
Come on, dude. They blew this game.
You've already been overruled by 2 out of 3. It's a wrap. You got outvoted.
I got to get Quinn and Saab's vote on this eventually.
No way.
Dude, this game, Arkansas blew it. They blew it in this game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They led by 14 midway through the third quarter. They had 263 more yards than Oklahoma State in this game. They also, time of possession, they had the ball for 12 minutes and 30 seconds more than Oklahoma State had in this game as well. But what happened in this game? Arkansas threw a pick six. They lost a fumble in Oklahoma State territory. They fumbled a punt, which gave Oklahoma State the ball in the red zone, which then scored a touchdown on. And then also Arkansas, 2 turnovers on downs, 1 in the red zone, and 2 missed field goals as well. They dominated Oklahoma State in this game, but just mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake is the reason why the Cowboys were able to survive in Stillwater.
I'm going to throw a couple more at you. Their offense graded 8 points higher than Oklahoma State's offense. Their defense graded 5 points higher than Oklahoma State's defense. And I think the most telling, there's 2 things for me that stand out here. I'll get to Arkansas and some issues that carry over from last year. Ollie Gordon had 17 carries for 49 yards.
Yep.
If you hold Ollie Gordon to 17 carries for 49 yards, you have to win. Any team, you would go, oh, that's an A-plus effort. We played great on defense.
Dude, I aced that upset pick.
You didn't ace it. You didn't win. You don't ace it.
I said stop Ollie Gordon and you win the game, and they didn't want to win the game.
I can't say I aced Tulsa. They didn't win.
They didn't want to win.
You can't ace something if you don't win.
Oklahoma State was handing them that game, saying, please, God, win this game, Arkansas. And Arkansas was like, no, you could take this one.
No, just for you, they didn't do it. But no, the other thing that sticks out to me, so the 2 years prior to last year, 2021 and 2022, I believe Arkansas was in the top 15 in pass protection in the country. Then there was a massive drop-off last year, and that seems to be staying. Right now, I think they still have an issue in pass protection. And I know Talon Green can move and do a lot of things on the run, but he was under pressure 24 times yesterday. He was sacked 3 times, and he was hit 11 times. Arkansas gave up a 39.6% pass rush win rate yesterday against Oklahoma State. This is the one problem. Talon Green in a clean pocket had an 87.6 passing grade, but you saw the interception was under pressure. The pick six that got Oklahoma State back in the game was under pressure. And look, he's just under pressure too much. They are asking Talon Green to do too much considering their pass protection right now. When he's clean, I'll be honest, through 2 weeks, he's exceeded a lot of my expectations.
Same.
I was not sure. He was up and down at Boise State. He's exceeded my expectations. Talon Green's playing really well when he's protected. There is too much pressure on him right now. This offensive line and their pass protection has to step up because, again, Oklahoma State's got a good pass rush. It seems they've moved Colin Oliver back to the edge, but you get in there against SEC defensive lines and you can't protect somebody, and you have a serious problem. So if they can improve their pass protection going forward, Max, this could be a really good offense. I think Bobby Petrino's calling really good plays. Talon Green is playing a lot better than we expected, but they have to protect him. If you cannot have a guy under pressure 24 times in a game and getting hit 11 times and sacked 3 times. That's just not going to win ball games.
No, it's definitely not. And, man, I almost hit that pick. That would have been an unreal pick. Get me right back. Dude, you were being such a jerk in the car about it, too.
I was hoping we were getting me and Eli.
You were such a jerk.
Absolutely.
I root for both of you. I root for both of your upset picks. And Dawn outwardly was rooting for Oklahoma State.
I wanted to see you on the island.
You were the worst. You were so. I wanted to kill you in that car ride home. That was the worst. All right. Number 19, Kansas. They were not as lucky as Oklahoma State in this game. They lost on the road to Illinois in this game, Dawn, 23-17. And honestly, the biggest difference in this game, one quarterback played pretty well and one quarterback did not play very well.
Yeah, I'll start with Jalen Daniels, a 44.9 passing grade. That's his lowest passing grade since 2020. You could argue last night he had the worst game of his career. 4 turnover-worthy plays, 3 interceptions, and the big thing for Kansas is, look, they want to throw the deep ball, right? They get over the top and they take big shots, and Jalen Daniels has the big arm. Illinois knew that, and they covered it extremely well. On deep balls last night, he was 0 for 6 with 2 turnover-worthy plays. That's really where it was at. If you make Kansas, and they can run the ball really well, and they're going to Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels with his feet, but they want to get over the top. And at no point did Illinois' secondary was spectacular last night. Just same thing. They're a team that they're real comfortable in man coverage, and they felt like they could cover Kansas's weapons, and they did. They did. I mean, especially down the field. Jalen Daniels wants to throw the ball down the field, especially down the middle of the field. Kansas was not able to manufacture long drives on enough occasions where that was the difference in the game. Was Illinois was very patient on offense. I believe they won the time of possession pretty handily. Kansas just couldn't get their home runs, and on nights when they don't hit home runs, it's going to look a lot different for them. So this I think they're still going to succeed on offense going forward. They have a really good offense, and Daniels, it's so rare that he plays like he played last night. I think they just have to just keep at it. And you had a rematch thing here, too. They played Illinois last year. Kansas was clearly the better team last year. Illinois came in, made the adjustments to the deep balls, made the adjustments to the running game because they didn't quite get outside on them as much as they did last year. And look, their offense played. Luke Altmaier played well. That's probably as good a game as I've seen him play.
Oh, ever. Yeah, he had an 87.1 passing grade in this game. And when I was looking back at how we graded each play, so we had so basically our grading scale, -2 to +2 on 0.5 point increments. He had 2 -1.5 point graded plays in this game,
Fumbles.
which are really bad.
Both fumbles.
2 fumbles, though, that he picked up. So they weren't back. Like, he picked them up, and the play. Actually, I think he completed on both passes on both of them. So other than that, though, he had one other negatively graded throw the entire game. Everything else was positive or at least neutral for him in this game. So Luke Altmaier did an excellent job in this game, 87.1. And like you mentioned, Jalen Daniels, 44.9 passing grade, 4 turnover-worthy plays. That's his first time since 2020 that he had that many turnover-worthy plays, and only a 58.1% adjusted completion percentage as well. So, yeah, rough day for Jalen Daniels, and Luke Altmaier did just enough to get the upset victory for Illinois. And the final game that we're going to talk about, Dalton, in this rapid fire is the Cy-Hawk rivalry going to Iowa State in this game, coming back to beat number 21 Iowa 20-19 in what was a thrilling game, honestly, at the end of it that we caught the very end of this game. What do you see in this game for Iowa State?
What a game, and we actually had it on the radio most of the ride home from Ann Arbor. Iowa State, Rocco Beck stepped up, man, against this defense, which is and it took him the entire game to really get it going. But Rocco Becht in the first half had a 36.4 passing grade. In the second half, a 74. And it's hard to even have a 74 passing grade a lot of times against that defense. But Rocco Becht and Jalen Knoll, 5 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown. The long touchdown that got him back into it. You don't score 75-yard touchdowns against Iowa. And I thought it was an extremely low chance of them doing it in this game. I thought it was a major advantage Iowa had. One huge explosive play, and then Knoll, 2 catches in a row in their final drive to set up the field goal in man-to-man coverage against Sebastian Castro, Iowa's best player. Mm-hmm. Man-to-man coverage, he beat him twice in a row to set up the field goal, and then what a kick. Kyle Conrarty, a 54-yarder on the road in that environment when they were down all day. But the difference was the quarterbacks, okay? Cade McNamara in the Iowa passing game, 72 yards in the first quarter, 27 yards the rest of the game. They couldn't find the balance. Iowa State made the adjustments in coverage. They were better up front as the game went on, but I think a lot of credit here goes to guys like Rocco Becht and Jalen Knoll for just sticking it out in a game that there were moments in this game where you thought there was just no way they were winning. And for him to make the clutch throws, Knoll to make the clutch catches, Jaden Higgins had a nice day too. He had a touchdown. The weapons for Iowa State are a serious threat at all times, and they overcame a lot of their deficiencies early in this game to win it. It was what a spectacular game this was.
Yeah, I'll take the defensive side quickly. Iowa State, 89.7 team coverage grade. 4 defenders had 70-plus coverage grades in this one. You mentioned it, how Cade McNamara had a really good first quarter and then nothing after that from the second quarter on in that game. So, yeah, Rocco Becht did a great job leading them back, and also that Iowa State defense just absolutely shut down Iowa's offense to lead the Cyclones to a victory in this game. All right, Dalton, so we're going to go over to our 3 standouts from the week of college football. 3 players that we really were blown away by in this game. I'll let you go first with your first standout of the week.
Well, let's just start. We know within a single game the emotions of a college football game, right? And then it turns into the emotions of a college football season. Was there anyone feeling lower about their team than the Florida Gator fans last week? And could there be anyone feeling higher about their team than the Florida Gator fans this week? Look, I know they played Samford, and I know it's his first career start. DJ Lagway just came in and showed you everything he was yesterday. And I normally wouldn't go with a guy against an FCS team, but true freshman, first career start, starting earlier than they wanted him to out of necessity with Graham Mertz's concussion. And he goes
5-star,
out
by
there.
the way, Dalton.
Say again?
5-star.
Of course, yeah. That's why you wanted me. That's why you wanted me to do this. But no, I was going to do it anyway. 456 passing yards was the most in the country this week. 3 touchdowns, 5 big time throws. He made the case that he has to start next week, whether Mertz is healthy or not, because there was several throws. Some of those big time throws, I'm not even sure Mertz is capable of making, and that's no shot at Graham Mertz, but he's a certain type of. He's a more conservative, don't turn the ball over, safer quarterback that is going to keep you in the games, but he doesn't always have that. They may have to start Lagway just for the ability, A, to move because he's more athletic than Mertz, and B, to just take the top off. And it could have a residual effect on making the run game better, giving the receivers more confidence that they can work down the field. Trey Wilson and those receivers. What he showed last night, I think it was very unlikely going into the game that he could have played well enough to maybe win the job, even if Mertz is healthy. I mean, you tell me, do you think they may have to play him against A&M next week? They might have to.
Not only because of how much it unlocks more of the offense, Billy Napier is in survival mode right now. And I think the best thing he can do is say, hey, let's start the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school, and let's have him look good, even if we lose games. But at least I can say, hey, you keep me around, this kid stays around, and we go into next year with more hope. I think that is why they might play him more so than the on-field stuff, which you got into really well. But I think there's an off-field element too. It's like, hey, Mertz is going after this year no matter what. Lagway's like, okay, he gives the program hope, which is something they don't have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's big. You want me to go on my second one, or are you going?
I'll go with my first one.
We got some time here. We could alternate.
Listen. Kyle McCord.
That's right. Here we go.
Kyle McCord.
I should have waited on this.
He's pretty damn good. This Kyle McCord guy is pretty damn good. I'll say that right now. Look at the hot video we got of Kyle McCord out there as well. 88 passing grade, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 big time throws, 0 turnover worthy plays, and his 76.
Look at him running in that clip too.
Did you see the clip?
Oh yeah. The clip, yeah.
My friend PJ Clark and I were texting back and forth. We're like, dude, I feel like Terrell Owens when he's crying about Tony Romo saying, that's my quarterback. That's my quarterback. When he was saying, these guys are effing soft. They don't want to be with us out here. I was like, dude, fire me up right now.
That's a guy on a revenge tour.
He is on a revenge tour.
I know you hyped up Cuse all offseason, and I said wait and see. But I really liked Kyle McCord at Ohio State. He did a much better job than people get him credit for.
So much better.
So much. I know he lost the Michigan game. I get it. But look, he played very well throughout all last season, and what did Fran Brown say last week? He said, what did he say? He said, I need to send a champagne bottle to Ohio State for giving me Kyle McCord.
Yep.
He probably needs to send him a whole case.
So Dalton, there have been 2 times in Kyle McCord's career where he's had 380 passing yards and 4 touchdowns in a game. Those were his first 2 games with Syracuse. Ohio last week and the Georgia Tech win this week. He currently leads the nation in passing touchdowns with 8, and he's 3rd in passing yards as well. Kyle McCord, listen, it's 2 games in. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. He looks pretty damn good. Big win for the Cuse over number 23 Georgia Tech, by the way, too.
That's a good team they beat.
Yeah,
that's a good team they beat. Georgia Tech's going to be hanging around the ACC too. That's a really, really good team. So props to the Orange. And you know what? As wide open, other than Miami, as the ACC looks to be, they might find themselves near the top if they keep playing like that. But I'll go to my second one. I'm cheating here a little bit. I got a dual threat for number 2, Max. I got 2 tight ends, and they're the 2 tight ends. We're going to go back to Penn State real quick. Penn State, Bowling Green. I got Tyler Warren for Penn State and Harold Fannin for Bowling Green. I know it's cheating now. I got 4 players and 3 picks, but the fact that they were playing in the same game, I just had to do it. Let's run through the lines real quick. Tyler Warren, 7 catches, all for first downs, 141 yards, and a 93.1 receiving grade. Tyler Warren up the seam is becoming a theme for this offense. There may not be a bigger – we talked about wide receivers all offseason with Penn State, Tyler Warren maybe is their most consistent threat in the passing game. And then Harold Fannin Jr. for Bowling Green. If you don't know this guy when it relates to the NFL draft next year, get to know him. 7 catches, 141 yards, 9 first downs, 3 missed tackles forced, and a touchdown. He was the dominant player on the field in the first half of this game, and he was the reason Bowling Green was ahead at halftime. These two guys are really, really good. Kotelnicki's using Warren like an ace, and Harold Fannin is Harold Fannin might just actually win the John Mackey Award. He's going to get into MAC play and put up crazy numbers in the MAC this year for a second year in a row. And those two total yardage for those two guys, they were the highest totals for tight ends this week, 141 and 137 yards. We had a tight end duel in Penn State yesterday between Penn State and Bowling Green. It was really fun to watch on both sides.
It really was, and they were outstanding. And one guy who's often tasked with covering tight ends, Dalton, is Jay Higgins, who was a monster against Iowa State. Yes, in a loss, I understand, but he had a 92.4 grade against the Cyclones. He had an interception, a forced fumble, and a tackle for loss or no gain to go along with 7 tackles and only 1 missed tackle as well. Listen, I know Harold Perkins, gets talked about a lot as the best linebacker in college football, and I still agree with that because of how good of a blitzer he is. But if you just want a pure off-ball linebacker, I don't think there's a better one in the country than Jake Higgins hitting as a linebacker.
He's a linebacker's linebacker.
Yes.
Like, as Iowa linebacker, a linebacker coach's best friend, he is just so fundamentally sound. He's a great tackler. He makes plays on the ball. That's an NFL linebacker is what that is.
Yeah.
And Higgins, and they have a bunch of great players. They have NFL players on their defense, but Higgins in the middle of it all. He was so good yesterday, and he's really like that every week.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can say about some of those guys in that Iowa defense, honestly.
Perkins is a chess piece. Higgins is a linebacker. So if you want best pure linebacker in college football, I would put my vote for Jay Higgins right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. He was incredible, and the Iowa defense. I feel for him because eventually you could just feel in that game where it's like eventually Iowa State's going to do just enough here. If Iowa doesn't score any more points in this game, it's that hang around game where you let a team hang. But no, Higgins was spectacular, absolutely. I usually try to find a defensive player. And you went with a couple. I'm going to stay on offense. I'll tell you what. Was there Fernando Mendoza for Cal through this offseason, through the second half of last year, through the beginning of this season, all the way through? At any point, he could have caved.
Yeah.
Right? Chandler Rogers is brought in from North Texas, fighting for the job. Mendoza wins the job as the incumbent, but there's a lot of people who think, he's on a short lease. Maybe we should see Rogers. And all he does in week 2, he played very well in week 1, I believe, against an FCS opponent. And then in week 2, goes into Auburn, and they pretty convincingly beat Auburn. 26 of 35, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, and 89.6 passing grade. And all of this, Max, on a day, we talked about Ollie Gordon, right? Auburn held Jaden Ott 10 carries for 11 yards. They didn't have much of a running game, and Ott is usually the engine of this offense. Fernando Mendoza went into Auburn with Jaden Ott having 11 yards on the day and shredded them. And Auburn was riding high after last week. They have all these true freshman receivers. I know Peyton Thorne threw 4 interceptions in this game. There's going to be some talk about that down there in Auburn. But Fernando Mendoza, that's one of the upsets of the, other than the Notre Dame game, one of the upsets of the week. Auburn was pretty heavily favored in that game, and he went out there and played lights out. And tell you what, play like that, he's keeping this job now after that win.
Absolutely. That's a huge win for that program. And Dalton, my final one I got to go with, another huge win for Texas, obviously, but another 5-star true freshman, obviously, I got to go with here. As Colin Simmons, the edge rusher from Texas, he was really freaking good for the Longhorns in this game. He had 6 pressures and a sack on only 16 pass rushing snaps against Michigan. And listen, Michigan's right tackle, Evan Link, had I think a 0.0 pass blocking grade overall in this game. That was pretty much because of Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons was beating him like a drum in this game, and he really was a dominant player. And if Colin Simmons, as a true freshman, keeps this level of play up, Texas might have just added a superstar pass rusher. And I like Simmons a lot coming out of high school. I was watching some of his tape coming out of high school at Duncanville. We played at a really good program there where they played really high-level competition. He was dominant there. He had like 24 sacks as a junior and one of the highest high school classifications in the country. This is a guy, man, that I think could be a really good player for Texas's defense long term, and even in the short term right now. He had a great game against Michigan and was really a standout player for them.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it goes to the theme that I don't know that we expected Texas to go into Michigan and just dominate in the trenches the way that they did, but they were spectacular. Literally every guy on their football team was spectacular.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at Texas and look at anybody. It was such a great team effort, and Simmons is another guy who had a great game. They were just so good all the way around.
Absolutely. So, Dalton, before we go here, we got to go over the brand new PFF Top 25.
The first Sunday reveal.
First Sunday reveal.
This is what you get out of Max and I at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night.
Yeah, this might be it might look a little weird because we did this literally at 2 a.m. Pre-AP poll as well. So maybe a little peek as what the AP poll could look like. Probably not, but what it could look like. I'll start at the top, though, Dalton, with the first 5 teams that we have up there. That is the Georgia Bulldogs, clearly still the best team in the country. They took care of business this week. Number 1 in the country. Texas moving up to number 2. They were number 5 for us, but after that dominant win against Michigan, they're number 2. Ohio State number 3. Ole Miss number 4, and then Alabama rounding out the top 5. And then we'll go to the 6 through 10. Just go through the entire top 25 right now. So 6 through 10. Eli's Volunteers. Oh, we got the entire top 25. Love this. Tennessee at 6. Oregon at 7. Miami at 8. Penn State at 9. Missouri at 10, Arizona at 11, Louisville at 12, USC 13, Kansas State 14, Oklahoma 15, Utah 16, Oklahoma State 17, and the 3 schools have a loss already, or 4 schools, I should say. Notre Dame 18, Michigan 19, LSU 20, Clemson 21, Iowa State 22, my Syracuse Orange getting in there at number 23, Boston College at number 24, and Northern Illinois, after the biggest win in program history, we're giving them some love there at number 25. Dalton, what stands out to you in this new top 25 that we have, though?
Couple of things. If we get Georgia, Texas as 1-2 when they meet up, that's going to be a boatload of fun. It was going to be fun anyway. It may be the best game of the year, but Georgia, Texas at 1-2. I mean, look how dominant the SEC is. Did they have 4 of our top 5, was it?
Yes.
They had Ole Miss and Bama.
Yep.
4 of our top 5 in the
5
SEC.
of the top 6.
5 of the top 6
Tennessee,
in the SEC, with Tennessee statement win. I know we moved them up. We moved them up a handful of spots there, but that's a statement. That's a ranked team. Mm-hmm. It was a neutral environment, but actually, there was a lot of Tennessee fans in that game. They kind of took over, didn't they? But a neutral environment, a good NC State team, and just put foot to them. The other one, too, there is no way going into the year that we saw Boston College, Missouri this week and said, yeah, it's going to be a ranked matchup.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if the AP will rank Boston College. We'll see. They were dominant this week against an FCS team. They beat Florida State convincingly in Florida State, and we had some teams in the back end of this top 25 that dropped out for us. So, but I think I like Boston College being included in there, and that's a fun game against Missouri, because you know what? Missouri's run defense is going to get tested in that game. You got some real fun elements in that game, and Bill O'Brien's team is coming to play. They're pretty good.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Yeah. So Kansas, Georgia Tech, and Iowa dropped out of the top 25 after all 3 of them lost this week. And yeah, it looks severe, dropping Notre Dame from number 3 last week to 18 this week. But that's just what happens when you have a loss that bad. Like a 28.5-point favorite and you lose to Northern Illinois. That's what happens.
I have similar concerns, and I know Clemson played a dynamite game against App State last night. We'll see if they can keep that up against some higher competition. But I have similar concerns with Notre Dame's offense as I do about Clemson, right? Just go, can we piece this together consistently against good competition, against good teams? Because, that's what they looked like against Northern Illinois. And they were good enough in the run game and all of that against A&M. Like, even the offense, the level they played at against A&M, that would be good enough for now, and then you get better throughout the season. The offense is really concerning for Notre Dame, and again, I think they have to run the table to make the playoff now.
They do.
That's the loss they couldn't afford.
No, they really do. So yeah, it's an interesting top 25 that we have now. A lot of chaos that happened this week, but yeah, it's really interesting seeing Tennessee move up 7 spots for us. That's what happens when you beat a top 25 team by 41 points. No bias to Eli, of course, moving that up that high, but yeah, dude, the SEC. It just means more, obviously, and the SEC has 5 of the top 6 teams right now, which is pretty insane.
And I think you're seeing a theme right now, but not just the SEC being dominant, but the ACC has been struggling. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten, with Michigan losing the way they did and Oregon struggling through their first 2 weeks. Right now, through 2 weeks, Penn State looks like the second best team in the Big Ten on the field. And the Big 12 that's just a dogfight. I mean, you've got so many stories. Kansas lost. K-State almost lost to Tulane. What a fantastic game that was. Cam Rising now hurt for Utah. We don't know that situation yet. I don't think it's going to be anything long term. But they didn't score a point after he came out of the game yesterday. Arizona didn't play their best game last night against Northern Arizona. The Big 12 is wild right now. The top of the SEC is sometimes other conferences get annoyed. Well, the Big 10 is just not right this minute. The top of the SEC is where college football is at its finest.
Absolutely. So, Dalton, before we go, obviously week 3 coming up, and if you look at the slate, a lot of people are like, oh, it's kind of a boring week of college football. Again, I want to remind people, that is when college football is at its best, though, because we have games that we did not even think, like Northern Illinois, Notre Dame, we did not think we'd even touch in this show. We had to lead off with it, basically. So there's a lot of games next week that we're going to be talking about. And you want to kind of spoil some of the games that we're going to talk about in our Tuesday night preview.
Absolutely. Week. Friday night, we got a fun one Friday night. Arizona going to Kansas State. And the only catch with it is because it was a previously agreed upon non-conference game, and it would give both teams too many conference games to play with. It's actually a non-conference game between Arizona and Kansas State, but still a really, really good game between two teams who didn't look their best this week, even though they won. But it could mean a lot if the Big 12 is looking for an at-large bid. The winner of that game, that could be a huge advantage because that's still a ranked matchup. They're two really good teams, and we saw two teams that didn't play their best, and K-State especially really escaped out of Tulane with a tight victory. They were looking down for a lot of that game. We've got Alabama at Wisconsin. Bama struggling with USF.
Yep.
We saw Wisconsin struggle with Western Michigan. Now they're both stepping up in competition. We'll see what their first game in the Power 5 for each looks like. How about Max, College Game Day is going to South Carolina.
I know. In week 3.
South Carolina dominated Kentucky, and now they get to host LSU. This is a fun. South Carolina wins that game, they're getting ranked.
Oh yeah,
they're getting ranked. Dylan Stewart off the edge. Their defense as not just Stewart, their defense as a whole yesterday was terrific.
TJ Sanders was awesome.
They have terrific players on their defense that we're going to look at on Tuesday. Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders in the offense kind of holding things down, but South Carolina's defense might be a real problem in the SEC. We just mentioned Boston College and Missouri. That's going to be a fun one. You've got Boston College rushing game against Missouri's passing game. And Max, look, we don't have enough time in the night. I don't know if we're going to do 5 or 6 or 7 games. We got to figure out. We may even need help from the chat in the comments.
I was going to say we should put it up to them.
Game. We might need some because there were just so many things. We could do Tulane, Oklahoma. Tulane almost upset K-State. Houston almost upset Oklahoma. The Brock Vandegrift revenge game. Although they struggled they obviously struggled last night with South Carolina. Kentucky against Georgia, hosting Georgia, and then you've got with DJ Lagway doing what he did for Florida yesterday. They're hosting A&M, and you've got the number 1 freshman quarterback in the country. Or was it him or Raiola?
No, he was number 1.
He was the number 1 quarterback in this freshman class against Trevor Sikkema's QB1 for this year's draft, Connor Wigman, in the Swamp. If Lagway starts especially, you may have a real story on your hands. Right now, looking at those two teams, I have no idea who would win that game.
That's why I kind of think we might have to do that game. That game is just for the Lagway versus Wigman part of it. I don't know.
We might need some fan voting.
We need
here
fan voting
in the next 24 hours and see which. Those are the 3. Unless we don't just do all of them.
No. We can't do all of them. No, it's not a good enough week to do all of them. There will be weeks where we do a lot more, but I don't think we could get away with that.
So maybe we do that. Let's see in the chat or the comments between Tulane, Oklahoma, Georgia, Kentucky, and A&M, Florida. Let's just get a loose poll going of who do the people want to see? Which of those 3 games do the people want to see us preview?
We will get that, absolutely. Actually, I'll be in attendance with Mitch Kaiser. We'll be going to the Georgia-Kentucky game as well.
So there you go. I have a wedding to be at next Saturday.
I know. You're going to be hurting.
I'm going to miss a college football. I'm glad that Arizona game's on Friday. I'm going to miss a college football Saturday. I'm going to get back. Probably next week. We got 3 hours of sleep or so tonight. At least I did.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah, I might be an all-nighter for me.
Yeah, it's going to be
I got to drive to Chicago for a wedding.
Absolutely. But that's what we got for our review show of a wild week 2 of college football. Again, preview show Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Be there. The 5 biggest games of week 3. We will be previewing and breaking them all down. Shout out producer Ty, producer Quinn, producer Eli back there. Shout out all the data collectors once again for all the work they do. for having all these numbers for us to go over.
Week 2 is the hardest week of the year for them. College football week 2 is the hardest week of the year.
And they're about to do a whole nother thing with NFL in a couple hours as well. They are truly doing God's work for PFF right now. But yeah, shout out to all of them. And again, Tuesday night, 6 p.m., be there for our college football preview show for week 3. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you on Tuesday night.